Hi, good morning, afternoon, evening, or hopefully not night. I chose topic number 13, which is about the nuclear impacts on the state of New Mexico. I'll be going through the necessary topics by the means of three different subjects. I'll start with Los Alamos and its legacy of nuclear testing and weapons material resources mining in our state. The victims of these events, domestically through the group of the Tularosa Downwinders, and then my experience. No, I'm sorry. With my experience on uranium contamination research in the Pueblo of Laguna, and all in all, examine health and life not under the threat of nuclear weapons, but the threat brought on by their very developments and how it is still affecting New Mexicans 80 years later. So, what is Los Alamos? If you've heard about it before, you would know it as the birthplace of the atomic age, where the first nuclear weapons were developed and tested. We'll go more into that later, but what is less known is the site's contributions to the modern age, is that the nuclear weapons developments did not stop in the 40s or 50s. Since the Manhattan Project, Los Alamos has developed over 90 different weapons, including the modern maintenance of the United States' nuclear arsenal by the production of plutonium pits and the development of the 93rd nuclear weapon type for the modern class of U.S. Navy submarines. And then this picture is actually basically a birthday cake that they made after they finished the second phase of development for the 93rd nuclear weapons type. And after START, which is the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which was signed in 1991 by the Premier of the Soviet Union and George H.W. Bush. The way weapons are produced is a little different than it was in the decades past. Due to this treaty, the United States and other world powers have focused on recommissioning previously decommissioned plutonium pits for the modern nuclear arsenal. And then this picture is one example of what one of these pits looks like. By 2030, the United States wants to make at least 80 of these a year. The United States is at an advantage with weapons maintenance, while other nuclear powers like Russia or France are reusing defunct plutonium pits, creating MOX fuel, which is a mixture of plutonium and uranium dioxide. Before nations could reuse and recycle this material, it was first taken from mines from all around the world. In the United States, much of its nuclear utensils were taken from the American West. And one of these mines is less than an hour away from the University of New Mexico, the Jackpile-Paguate Mine in the Pueblo of Laguna, which I'll also go into later. While Los Alamos is famous for its development of nuclear weapons, the actual testing of the weapon was not done anywhere close to the Los Alamos site. It was done hundreds of miles away in the White Sands Missile Range, in an area known as the Trinity Site. This is an aerial view of the McDonald Ranch House, where they reconstructed the Trinity test device, known by personnel as the Gadget, before raising it on a tower for testing. And then this here is actually just a picture that I took at the Nuclear Museum in Albuquerque. I went there during my first semester. And then it was reported that the sun rose hours earlier, the day the Gadget was tested. From miles away, even reports from Albuquerque, people noted a blinding flash in a rising mushroom cloud, pictured here. But it wasn't just a spectacle. For those who lived downwind of the blast in southern New Mexico, it was the first day of the rest of their lives. The resulting fallout from Gadget blew radioactive dust downwind, and primarily to the south towards the town of Tularosa. The peoples of the state banded together in the quote-unquote uranium capital of the world, just New Mexico, to fight the injustices of both uranium mining and the nuclear tests of Los Alamos through the group known as the Tularosa Downwinders. And across the state's land sits thousands of abandoned uranium mines and numerous massive uranium coal dumps that spread their friable material through the heavy downwind airstreams off like earthly monuments such as like Mount Taylor or southern stretches of the Morrison Formation. and towards indigenous reservations and small towns outside of them. And then the picture below is a valley in the Jackpile-Paguate Mine, a picture that I took. The sides of the valley are where the Anaconda mining company carved to find deposits. And for the Tularosa Downwinders, their fight culminated in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, or RECA. This provided partial reparation payments to on-site victims of atomic bomb testing, as well as victims in nearby communities. And the United States Congress passed that bill and left out numerous communities that had been struck with illness and cancers due to their exposure to radioactive fallouts. And the fallout itself extended from the mountains of Montana to the island territory of Guam. These communities are still left unable to afford payments for treatments, surgeries, hotels, medications, and other transactions related to treating cancer and other acute illnesses. There's a person in New Mexico, Tina Cordova, who is a lifelong New Mexican, having been raised in the rural town of Tularosa. In her lifetime, she has witnessed the negative health effects that have been instigated by the first nuclear blast at the Trinity site. So she co-founded the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium to bring attention to the uncompensated victims who unknowingly took part in the paradigm shifts led by Robert Oppenheimer's closed city in Los Alamos. And as a cancer survivor herself, Cordova intended on leading her consortium to fight for an amendment in the RICO legislation that extends beyond just the on-site victims, but to every person across the Western United States and beyond who was affected by the broad and boundless nuclear fallouts. And a big part of the Downwinders mission was to assign the state of New Mexico, sorry, the state of New Mexico as a downwind site. From the graph here, it is obvious that most of the nuclear fallout from testing comes from southern Nevada. For years, Nevada was the only state that was considered part of RECA. And moving on towards RECA, it extends towards the mining victims as well. Most of this comes from my experience in the aforementioned Laguna Pueblo and uranium contamination research from the Jackpile-Paguate Mine. And here's the group that I was with. I'm in the red hat over here in the green flannel, coming off of deposits both broken and still intact, like this yellow cake deposit, or not yellow cake deposit, uranium oxide deposit. The dust from the mine has infected the nearby towns, including Paguate and other farms, destroying the agricultural foundations of the community. And plants and cattle were poisoned. I was shown pictures of sheep with their intestines yellowed and filled with tumors. And then we used these towers over here with passive air filters to catch dust over the course of a couple months. And this is me removing a filter, which I later tested at UNM in the basement of Northrop Hall. We separated the comp material, I think it was using acetone, and then using the T-scan scanning electron microscope, and found all kinds of different harmful materials. And one of the main things was that we were looking for uranium, but we actually found several other dangerous heavy metals, including chromium, which, based off of what the project leader said right here, she was surprised to find that. But not every uranium mine is like this one. But after the Anaconda company went defunct, as you can see from all my pictures, they left equipment behind and left the area poorly remediated. And if I remember correctly, the company officially went defunct in the 90s after the START treaty was signed, but the Jackpile-Paguate mine itself stopped sometime in the 80s. After another treaty went through domestically surrounding mines on reservations. I believe that one was from the Carter administration. But over the years, the EPA have gone in to conduct further remediation of all kinds of mines over the American West, just to determine like the amount of damage that had been done. But much of the damage that had already been done, it can't be recovered. Because of this damage, the communities and families are left divided and sick, and environmentally, wildlife continues to suffer from the same afflictions as the humans do. So the legacy of Los Alamos, more often than not, is calculated by the actions and consequences of a few different historical events. One of which is the bombings in Japan by the United States, the Cold War, and nuclear proliferation, mutually assured destruction. But a nuclear weapon hasn't killed a single human since 1945. But the fallout, decades later, is what is killing people to this day. And families around the world are still affected by poor remediation, and not just in the United States. While this part of history may be forgotten by some, the work like what I helped with a few years ago in the Pueblo Laguna is what keeps that memory alive by proving that poor remediation or none at all is still killing people. One day soon, we might be able to convince those in power that poorly funded remediation missions result in more deaths and more long-term health complications than the weapons themselves do. Thank you.